Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Lyons, and this is Soul Blind's How to Read the Bible Book of Secrets. I've been talking about this for a time. I haven't actually showed many of you how to read the Book of Secrets. We've been doing, or at least I started a video series on how to see the basics, the foundations of how the book works. But I figured it might be also beneficial to just show you how to read the book yourself, and we'll go through this and you'll see how the Bible changes miraculously from one set of text to another, teaching you a personal truth about yourself. It's fantastic. It's taken me years to figure out how this all works. We've been working on it a very long time, and it took a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, but it's finally coming together, and I'd like to share it with you, and hopefully you'll understand it, and you can actually see God's word come to life. This is actually the voice of God using the people of the Bible, the people, places, everything about it, and see it come to life before your eyes. Now, you're going to need a few things before you do this. You're going to need, obviously, a computer where you're at right now. You will also need to open up, if you have something like Microsoft Word, perhaps, or because that's what I'm going to use, and you're going to need a web browser. Now, I can do most of the web browser stuff to show you, and you can follow along. I will also post the definitions afterwards, and maybe that'll save you a little bit of work if you don't want to do the hard labor yourself. But if you do follow along, it will help you find how to read the book without me having to be present. You can actually do this by yourself later on. And these translations will work everywhere across the board in the Bible. The entire book changes miraculously. It's fantastic. So I don't know how long this lesson's going to take. I'm only going to do the first 3 verses. There's a lot to cover in those first 3 verses. I'm going to do this on a regular basis as best I can when I can. But without further ado, let's go ahead and try to just jump into this and see if it starts to make sense. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to open a Word document or some kind of, you can take notes too, but you're going to have to do some replacing of the Word documents. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a Word document here. And in this Word document, I'm not going to show it yet. I'll show you in just a moment once I start actually working on it. The next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to open up a Windows browser or some kind of browser, and you're going to go to a website, and that website is the blueletterbible.org. blueletterbible.org. All right, and it looks like this when you get there. All right, so blueletterbible.org. Once you're there, you'll see on the right side here, there's a place for you to do a search. I'm going to go ahead and type in Genesis 1. We don't have to worry about the verse because it's going to start with the first verse. All right, now the first thing you're going to notice is that it says it has the Bible verses, the book name at the top, and this is the King James Version. King James Version syncs up to the Strong's very succinctly. It's fantastic the way it works, even though this was written originally in Hebrew and Aramaic. The translations are turned into English, so that means that the structure of the sentences have been rearranged for us. So that makes it very easy to do the translations. Now, for this to work, at the top here, there is an option that says Strong's. Click on that, and you'll notice that the page will reload, and it'll add in these hyperlinks, and these hyperlinks are the Strong's number themselves. Okay? Now, before we get started and go in here, what I want you to do is, if you can, I want you to select, you can either select these one at a time and put them into another page. You can select them like so. Go ahead and copy that, and I'll come over to my Word document, and we'll share that as we go to the Word document and share document 4. This is the right one, and we'll paste it. Okay. Now all of a sudden you see that if you come straight into Word, don't do any kind of special pasting, just paste straight away. It will give you the hyperlink as well as the words. Okay, so we now have Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 on our page. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other ones too. And I'm going to go ahead and select those real quick. Copy and paste. And copy and paste. All right. Now, if you can't keep up, if I'm going too fast for you, that's quite all right. You can review this, rewind it. It is a video being shown through YouTube, so you can do this at your leisure. All right. Now, the important thing to do now is we're going to go back to the Blue Letter Bible. I'll show you how that will go. So Blue Letter Bible. All right. Back in the Blue Letter Bible, you can see that we have our hyperlinks here. Now you can do this from Word. You can hit Control and click on the hyperlink, but it's harder for me to show you back and forth with the screen sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how this works. Okay, I'm going to show you through the Blue Letter Bible itself. Now, the book starts off very simply. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." Now, everybody knows this is the story of chapter 1 is the story of the world itself and its creation. Now, if you join us for our basic foundations classes, the principles, you understand that it's actually the earth, the world is really you. And the world is divided into 3 attributes of the self: the higher self, the lower self, and the reflective medium in between: sky, earth, and water. All right. So now we're going to have, you'll see how this actually starts to fall into place by starting with "in the beginning." Now, all of these words are actually only one word, and we're going to go ahead and click on that hyperlink. Right. Now, if you want to, you can open it by holding, by right-clicking and bring it up in a new window. But for our purposes, I'm going to just click into it and show you how it works. So it says Rashith. This is the word that is in the beginning. And then you can see where the definition now it says biblical usage is first, beginning, best, chief, beginning, choice parts, all this stuff, right? But it comes from the same as this word here, right? Head, top, summit, upper part, chief, total sum, height, front, beginning, Rosh. The word Rosh in this particular sense, because it's about you, Rosh is the head. All right. So we're going to take the word head, right? And we're going to come back to our Word document. Let's go back to the Word document. And we're going to do a replace on our Word document. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and use the word replace on the side here. And I'm going to take the, I was doing this earlier. And I'm going to take this particular text right here. And I'm going to plug it in on the top and on the bottom. This is going to find the word, and this is going to replace it with a new name. All right. And I also turn on an option to find the whole word in its case. In this particular case, we're going to write in the word head. All right. So we're going to go ahead and replace all instances of it. Now, you don't have to just copy just a few verses at a time. You can copy the entire chapter, paste it, and then replace it, which is a very, very useful thing to do. So we're going to go ahead and replace all. And you can see how that's indeed changed. It says in the head. Instead of in the beginning, we've now changed it to in the head. And it sounds a little peculiar, but this is going to start to make sense. All right. Remember, this is about you and your relationship with the Creator. All right. So we are going to go ahead and go back to the Blue Letter Bible. And you're going to see, the dog is asking for attention here, that we're going to go back from our browser to Genesis chapter 1. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The word God, in this particular case, is going to change in definition because this is about you and your relationship with the self. Hello, puppy. He wants attention. I'll try to ignore him the best I can. All right, so the whole thing is about you personally, and so you are trying to rule your inner world The word for soul represents your mind, and the inner world is the cosmos. Cosmos means the order of your inner world. All right, so if you are to become a reflection of God, to mirror God, you must take on the attributes of God. In this particular view, God is no longer about God himself, but about an attribute of yourself. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click on the word God, and you see the word Elohim, and you've seen this word before, Elohim, Elohim. All right, now notice here that it is a plural. It is not one, but many. All right, and the main thing we're looking at is rulers and judges. Now we have all these other things that are godlike or godly, but the primary thing that we're going to work with is judges or rulers. Now, because this is about yourself, I'm going to go ahead and look at the root of it, God or false God, right? But in this particular case, it is judgment, discernment. So we are going to actually change the name of God. This is not meant to be sacrilegious. We're changing this from one definition to another definition. So this is going to be, give me a second here. We're going to change back in our Word document, again, this plurality of gods or rulers. So this is discernment of judgment. All right, so we're going to come back over to our Word document. Word document, start screen share, and we're going to go ahead and do a replace with the H430. And you will see that this now becomes, oops, I always spelled this poorly. Let's see, copy and paste. All right, judgment and discernment. I'm going to go ahead and do a replace all, and you replace it everywhere. And so, oops, made a mistake there. All right, so in the beginning, or in the head, judgment or discernment. Discernment or judgment, created, all right? And basically the word created just means to shape or create, all right? And this just is part of the grammar applying to created itself. All right, now the next thing we're going to look at is the word heaven. There's heaven and earth. Now remember I told you that your world, your inner world, has been divided. It's changing from one to another. We're going from the outer world to the inner world. The inner world is broken into three landscapes. We can consider it best as being the mind, body, and spirit. In between, the higher self, the lower self, and then balance between the two. It's a reflective medium. You'll see how this works as we go. All right? So we're going to go back to the word heaven. So in the head, discernment of judgment created the heaven. Now the word heaven here is Shemayim, heaven, heavens, or sky. All right? Comes from an unused word meaning to be lofty, lofty, elevation, higher truth, right? This is what we're about, that we are trying to find the higher self versus the lower self. The traditionally Hebrews don't have a heaven like we do. They have the sky. That's just the word for sky. So when we're, instead of writing sky, we're going to change that definition over to, well, let's see, best way to do this is we're going to write out in our replace window, we're going to take the number H8064, and I'm going to replace that with, let's see if I can copy, paste. We're going to write out higher understanding / super ego. By modern terms, the higher understanding or the higher self is the super ego. All right, let's go ahead and replace everything that says that with higher understanding and super ego. So In the head, discernment of judgment creates the higher understanding and that literally means and right there, and the earth, all right? So if we look at what the earth means, the earth is, and switch over to the Bible. All right, so now we're going to go back to earth and heaven and the earth. Earth, all right, land, earth. Okay, all right, this is the word that it's coming from here. Now, you can see over and over it just says ground, whatever else. It can be the people, the land, whatever else. But all these attributes of the earth are your lower self that you're going to go through a process of building up from a lower state of existence unto a higher state of existence. When you build up from the land, you will reach the heavens, and then the heavens will become in sync and become in balance, all right? But what you need to focus on here is from an unused word meaning to be firm. One is lofty, one is firm. Now imagine you're in a mirror, because this all works as a reflection, being a reflection of God. If you're in a mirror, that one side is intangible and the other side is real and firm, okay? So you need to try to figure out how to create from your lofty aspirations my higher self, what are my goals, my dreams, what I'd like to become, versus my basic self, which society and life has taught me who I am and how I am. And so that creates a disconnect between myself. I am constantly disjointed. I'm in a state of confusion because of this, because I have my dreams and goals, but then there is the reality of my actual possibilities. And because I have these two things, I'm always, the reflection, as though it's water, is been shaken and you cannot see the reflection of God. All right, so in this case, we're going to go back into our Word document and we're going to change the definition of the word earth and replace it with, let's go ahead and do the find and replace here. And we are going to replace the earth with primitive understanding and id, because the id represents the animal or beast self. Remember how the Bible's talking about you being a beast, but we're trying to emulate God. So in this particular case, we're going to try and take the beast and turn it into God. So this one is the primitive understanding. So we're going to do it. Whoops, do that. Replace all. Okay. So now, if you look at the way it reads, it says, "In the head, discernment and judgment creates the higher understanding of the superego and the primitive understanding of the id." So that's verse 1 of the Bible. In fact, the transliteration of that particular verse would come out something more akin to, let's see. So, Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. All right. So that instead becomes something like this. In the head, discernment of judgment creates the superego's higher understanding and the id's primitive understanding. In the beginning, God, discernment of judgment, creates the heaven, superego, higher understanding, id, primitive understanding. So this is telling you that within your head, you are smart, and within your judgments of true judgment creates a division of self, that I can now determine the two sides of myself. The Greeks used to have a god named Janus. Janus was a god of seeing two sides at once. You could see basically behind him and in front of him, past and future self. And so this is kind of the same idea, seeing behind you and in front of you, that which you know and that which what you would wish to become. And so now you're working with two sides of yourself. All right, so verse 1, we have that now, is talking about the division of yourself through judgment has created that. All right, now let's go ahead and go back to our Blue Letter Bible. And we will look at verse number 2. All right, so verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. All right, now we already know what earth is. If you look at the numbers, are the same ones, H776, H776. All right, so that's going to be replaced. When I did that replace all on the other page, it told me that this is, and the primitive self was without form. All right, we're going to look at what without form means, so we'll go ahead and click on that. Oops, hit the wrong button here. Let's try and click on that again. Without form means, all right, formlessness, confusion, unreality, and not just emptiness. The world isn't empty. The world is from an unused root meaning to lie waste. It's desolation because it is formless, without shape. There is no structure to your world. Your inner world is filled with confusion and without structure. So in your, go back to your Word document. And in the Word document, we're going to go ahead and go into where and do a find or replace. It says, and the world and the earth was without form and void. So we're going to go ahead and change was without form. So this number here, copy that, paste it into my replace, and I'm going to come into enter in instead confusion and without structure. So, oops, a second, copy and paste. All right. And replace all. All right. Oh, did I make a mistake? Without form. Oh, I had the wrong number in there. Let's try that one more time. Copy and paste. Replace all. All right. All right. And so now we see. Oh, what did I do? I made a mistake here somehow. This happens a lot. This is why you normally have to be very careful with how you do things. Oh, I had replaced the wrong word. Originally, I forgot to replace my first, replace what with what. And let's try that again. Replace all. Yes. All right. Okay, so now it has, and the primitive understanding, or the id, was without, or was with confusion and without structure. And void, all right? Now the word void simply just means emptiness. You're welcome to change that if you like to. In terms of just, we can go look it up if you want, but it just says basically to be empty or emptiness. All right, to save a little time, we'll just go ahead and do the replace now. And we'll say emptiness, replace all. Yes. Okay, so your inner world is your primitive self. Is without structure, it's confused, has emptiness, and now we have darkness, all right? The word darkness literally comes from kind of a sense of, well, ignorance, because if you consider light to be illumination of the soul, then ignorance will be the opposite of light. So let's go back to our Blue Letter Bible, and you can see that we go to the word darkness, and again, you can be doing this on your own on the computer. We'll see the word darkness here. Okay, darkness or obscurity or a secret place. Basically, we're going to go look at the root word real quick. Sometimes you got to be very careful when how deep you go. These get to a root. If the word changes too far and the definitions change too far, you've gone too far. You've gone too deep into it where it starts transitioning into something else. But you can usually get a clue of what something means when you go beyond the first level and start getting into its root words where it comes from. So this one just means to grow dark, to grow dim. So basically, this is still ignorance. If something is hidden or secret or obscure to you, it means you don't understand it. And so it's not trying to be rude to say ignorance, it just means that you don't know. But it's easy enough to do the translation as being ignorance. All right, so we'll go back over to our screen sharing, and we'll change the word for darkness, and we will replace that with the words ignorance and obscurity. Ignorance and obscurity, all right? So basically, not everything has to do with you being without being dumb. It's just about not understanding. So darkness is the ignorance of not understanding. All right, so the primitive self is without structure. It's confused, empty, and it's full of ignorance. So ignorance was upon the face of the deep. Okay. Now the word face simply just means that it's upon, towards, against. It's basically referring to a direction. It doesn't necessarily have to be a face. It does have the word face sometimes, but generally it's referring to pointing to a certain direction. So it's not about a person's particular face, as you see mine. It's about pointing in that direction. So the words were directing us from one attribute to another. Okay, so now the next thing we need to look at is the word deep. All right, because darkness was upon the face of the deep. So darkness was within the deep. Now the deep is worth checking out because it's not just deep, because it is talking about yourself, but it's also, it's kind of a little bit more in depth, because we're going to go into the root, because the word for depth comes from to distract, to ring again, make a great noise, to murmur, to roar, discomfit, be moved. So basically, it's not just the fact, it's disquietude. So basically, that it's not just the deepness of yourself, but it is a deep discomfort, a deep uneasiness. And it comes from another primitive root word. It tells you to compare it to this one, which basically means to move noisily, confuse, right? To discomfit, break, consume, crush, destroy. So basically, it's telling you that within yourself, you are now gone to the point of the confusion has gone throughout you, and it has created a complete unease of the spirit. Now, a lot of times people don't realize that there is more to this than just the words by themselves. There's a little bit extra definition. It's about noise that's within your spirit. Your mind is made up of many voices. A lot of people have told you things throughout your life, all right? And when you start reading later on, you'll start seeing how each person in the Bible represents one of those voices that's within you. It's an ideal or a belief that you have, or a truth that you have built your life upon. Each truth will become a series of other truths. From one truth, it regenerates and creates another, and creates another, and creates another, and stacks upon each other. That's how the Bible's written. Each name in the Bible represents a truth that builds upon another. All right. Basically, in fact, the name child or son in the Bible means to build. So you're taking a name and building upon the name and building upon it. So from one concept creates another concept and another and another, and thus you are creating a lineage of truth. So within yourself, you are creating understanding by building upon the truths that you have. All right, and so those voices inside you create a lot of confusion. And so you need to find out how to quiet all the noise within yourself, all right? So now we're gonna go ahead and go back to our screen sharing of the Word document. And you have now, and the primitive self, primitive understanding of the id is without, is confusing without structure. It is emptiness, so you have no structure, you're empty, you're ignorant, And in that is leading towards a basically kind of a, I guess the best one is disquietingness of the depths within you. So you're having a little trouble finding peace within yourself because of all the noise that is within yourself. So we're going to go ahead and just write instead disquieting depths for now. That probably works the best for what we're doing. Oops, and replace all. All right. So now the verse is taking on a very different look than it did before, because before we just had, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And this is you. You are the one. You are the earth. Your primitive self is confused, and there's no structure. You're empty inside. Most of us are empty inside for many different reasons. That's why we lead to a lot of well, what we call sin. So the word sin means to err. So we all err in many ways because we are confused, empty. And in fact, a big theme in the Bible that you may not realize is eating. To eat something means to consume it. The more you consume, the more it becomes a part of you. Whatever you eat becomes a part of you, and you become, you take on the strength of the thing you ate. So if you're empty, it means you're desirous, that you need to be filled. And so you have hungers, and hungers are desire. And so biblically speaking, we're trying to find truth to fill our hungers with. And so we're trying to find what is really true versus a false truth. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the Blue Letter Bible yet again. And so we have this face of the deep. Okay. Now we have, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. All right. Now we're going to use the word spirit. Now, I told you before that the soul represents the mind. And this is basically along the same lines. We're going to click on this, and you're going to see that spirit means the mind. It means wind, breath, and all that, but it's technically the mind. Whenever the Bible refers to spirit, it is generally it uses like breath, basically because it means like a living vitality. It's something that has no structure, but it is still living, right? And this particular one, we're going to use mind. Okay, so mind is your key. So go back over to your Word document, and you're going to change the word spirit to instead be the mind. So let's go ahead and change the spirit. And you can tell this one's a capital because generally when you're taught in the Bible, this is the Holy Spirit, and that's what this is. It is the Holy Spirit. But again, we're reading the Book of Secrets. We're not reading the outer layer of the Bible. We are reading instead the inner truth that God is teaching us through the people of the Bible. And that's the fantastic part, that He could use real people's lives to teach us higher truths about ourselves so that we may become a true reflection of our Creator. So we're going to go ahead and replace spirit with mind. All right. So, and then if you notice it before, because we did replace all, the same number, H430, changed also down here with this version of God. It's also Elohim, which is discernment of judgment. Okay. So, and the mind of discernment of judgment. Now we are in the word moved. All right. The word moved actually comes from, well, let's actually look at it. I think this one's probably nice to see how this one works out. We'll go back again to our Blue Letter Bible. And now a lot of the words that are chosen, the Bible has, the interesting thing about the way the languages work is that they often have duality to their meaning. So that's why this book exists, and most people don't see it because it's seen from a perspective of us looking at the world outside us versus us looking to the world inside us as a mirror of God Himself. All right, so moved, we're going to look at the word moved, and you can see that instead it means to grow soft or to relax. Now it can also mean to hover, but primarily the word you're looking at is to relax. So instead, this thing comes out to being as to settle or calm. It's calming yourself. So it's not moving. So the mind of the discernment calms and relaxes. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back over to our Word document then, and we'll go ahead and change the text there. All right, so the moved will become then find what and replace with I'm going to put in here settles and calms, because that works very well when you see how this starts working, because he's going to end up being on these waters. He's going to calm these waters. All right, so let's go back here and we replace. And okay, so the mind of discernment calms. And again, this the upon, just the word used for upon here doesn't necessarily mean to be on something. It can mean towards or in the presence of something or facing something. It's basically directing towards something else. And the facing too is the same thing as like towards, how do you explain it? Towards or in the presence of or facing something. It's just another direction. So basically these are just saying that it calms in the direction of the waters. All right. And the waters, we're going to go back to the BibleBOSs.org. Let's look at our Strongs. Now, there's other Blue Letter Bibles that you can, or Strong's Concordances. You can get the actual book. You can get them online. I like this particular tool because it has more depth to it than just the definitions. It actually has excerpts from the lexicon itself. I'm going to go ahead and click on Waters here. And in the Waters, because you can see it has, there's more information here at the bottom that kind of helps you get a little bit more idea of things. But most of this is, you'll see it's just, it's talking about water over and over again and using Bible verses to it. It's a little convoluted if you don't understand how it works, but look at the root word that they have for mayim, dual of a primitive noun, but used as a singular sense. So basically, this is a mirror, and in the mirror, there is a reflectiveness. You're going to see a reflection of yourself. This is all about the higher self reflecting, or the lower self reflecting in the higher self. You're going to build up the lower self so it stops being a beast and becomes as a man. And when you become as a man, you become a reflection of God. So we are taking the lower self and having the duality of that self become as a singular sense. So two sides of one truth, right? Water represents truth. The mirror is truth, right? But in this particular case, you can see it has some other definitions of danger, violence, transitory things, and refreshment. Well, the primary thing that we're using in the Book of Secrets is it's transitory. It's transitional, okay? So the waters at this particular point are not only just the reflective medium, but they are a sense of transition, all right? So come back over into your Word document, and you're going to change the word waters, and we're going to change that to being I'm going to put waters and transition. Okay, again, you can put mirror if you want to in there also, if it makes it easier for you to understand. So I'm going to go ahead and put water and transition, and I'm going to go ahead and replace all that. Now, if you were doing more than just these few verses, the reason I do a replace all is because it those same words will show up later on in different places. You may not expect them. Sometimes the same number is used as a different word that you may not have realized. Like say maybe something like was ends up being also something else. Or like, let's see, H559, let it be light. Yeah, to bring it down. I can't see it offhand right now. I have it on here. But anyhow, sometimes it's used in places you don't expect it. It's under a different definition at the time when it's being written out of the Bible. But that's just because it's being translated into an English that we can understand it. All right. So anyhow, look at what it says now. We have, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, you look at it at the Book of Secrets and look at what the definitions and what symbolically what they say, and it says, and the primitive understanding was with confusion and without structure and void, emptiness, and ignorance and obscurity was, these are towards a disquieting depth. So basically a noisy inner self. And the mind of discernment calms the waters of transition. It calms the transitional self. Basically, most of the time when the Bible talks about waters, it's talking about the sea itself. The sea is often wavy. It's full of waves, and it comes to the word to roar. That means that you are disquieted within yourself, that your reflection is distorted because you are upset, you are out of balance. That disquieting depths that it's talking about within you, the past self and future self are in constant odds with each other, or my ideal self and real self are not syncing up. So the waters are in turmoil. So when Christ comes, he calms the waters so that you may transition from one state to another, the lower self to the higher self, from death into life. All right, so that your consciousness will not be that of death, but that of growth. If you're not growing, you're dying. And so that's what this is about. It's about creating a living truth, that which lifts you up versus what weighs you down. Okay, so essentially, if we took verse 2 and we did a transliteration of it into a modern English term, you would end up with something like this. Let's go ahead and share that so you can see it. And all right, back to our Word document. All right, so now you can see that right here we have verse 1 at the top, and we have verse 2, okay? So instead of verse 2 that was here, I'm putting numbers on them since I copied those over. I did this for speed, and even though it's not exactly the fastest way in the world to show you. But so basically the primitive understanding brings about a confusing lack of structure. Primitive understanding brings about a confusing lack of structure. Emptiness and ignorance unto the depths of a noisy and unsettled spirit. So basically an uneasiness within you. So, but the mind of discernment creates or calms, it creates ease through transition and change. So basically, this would be a closer modern transliteration of the second verse of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1-2. So now, so far, we have in the head, discernment and judgment creates a super ego's higher understanding, and the id's primitive understanding. Primitive understanding brings about a confusing lack of structure, emptiness, and ignorance unto the depths of a noisy and unsettled spirit. But the mind of discernment creates ease through transitional change. Now, I'm telling you, this whole book is about, it's changing the book that you know to being God's voice talking to you as an individual. It's not about people and places of past and God showing off these massive miracles just to show off that he's God. He's actually writing a book, a manual that you can use to create peace within yourself by using their lives, people, places, and things into an exacting order that creates a manual of peace. It's fantastic when you realize this is proof of God. real people, real places that did not write themselves. They were written because the influence of God directed them to teach future generations how to find peace within. This book took thousands of years to create for future generations. And I don't know why it's disappeared. It could be because of ignorance. It could be because control. Or it could just be that God has been saving this for a future generation for us to unlock and find out now that we have a higher understanding to see how this works. I don't know the reason. I don't know how. All I know is it's fantastic. I love it, and that's why I love sharing this. Okay, so we're going to go down to verse 3. This will be our last verse that we do for the day, because again, there's a lot that I'm laying on top of you today. And you're learning how to read the Book of Secrets. You're learning how to use a Strong's Concordance, and how to change the words from one to another so that you can read the Book of Secrets yourself. All right, now look again at the number. We're still using the same Elohim that's used everywhere else for God, so you don't have to translate that one. So, and judgment and discernment, said. Now, the particular word for said basically means to, we're going to go ahead and click on that, and that creates, it's going to be to speak or to utter or to avow, to avouch. It can also be to boast and act proudly, but these particular ones are what we're looking at here, all right? That avow or avouch. Basically, it means to declare or to pledge that this thing, or to make it known. So we're going to make these things known. All right, so let's go into our Word document yet again, and Word document here. All right, and so the word said then becomes translated into, I'm going to use the words to avow, declare, pledge, or make known. Makes it easier for you to understand it when you read it later. It's the same definitions, just a little more succinct and clear to understand it. And we'll go ahead and replace it all. And so now we have judgment and discernment declares or pledges or makes known that let there be light, and there was light. Okay, so we're going to look at the word and let there be back in our Blue Letter Bible. We're almost done. Hang in there with me. Blue Letter Bible, start screen share. All right, so and let there be. And basically it has the same definition: to be, to become, come to pass, to exist, or to happen. It just means it's let it be. It's to bring about. Okay? All right, so if that's the case, we're going to go back to our Word document and change let there be. And go into our replace. And I'm going to use the words to bring about. Okay? And it will be to bring about. Replace all. Okay, so, and judgment or discernment pledges or makes known and brings about light, and there was light. Okay, so we talked about light briefly earlier, and that light basically means enlightenment, to become enlightened, to become smart. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at light, because we're here. And I'm going to go, hope it helps if I share the screen so you can see what I'm doing. And I lost my share. There we go. And here we go, start screen. All right. And light. Both these numbers are the same, 216, 216. I'll look at those. And it means light, right? It's light, like prosperity, light of instruction, light of life, but basically light of instruction. To enlighten, to make known. Let's see, we're going to look at the root of it. To become light, to shine, to become illuminated. All right, to be illumination, to light up. Basically, this is knowledge. So we're going to use the word enlightenment. It's the easiest one to be universally translated throughout. When you use it later on, enlightenment works well in English, and so it makes it easy to see. So I'm going to come over to my Word document yet again, and we're going to go ahead and change the word light to enlightenment. And we'll go ahead and replace all that. Okay, so now we have the final translations here of these 3 verses. Okay, the third verse, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Basically, that translation will come out to being and something like this. There. All right, so this now says, the discernment of judgment avows dedication to bring forth enlightenment, and thus there is enlightenment. So read that from the beginning. In the head, discernment of judgment creates the superego's higher understanding and the id's primitive understanding. Primitive understanding brings about a confusing lack of structure, emptiness, and ignorance unto the depths of a noisy and unsettled spirit. But the mind of discernment creates ease through transitional change. The discernment of judgment avows dedication to bring forth enlightenment, and thus there is enlightenment. So this is all about dedication, that because I have judgment within myself, that I have a higher understanding, and I can recognize my understandings are divided, that my attentions are divided, that there is now a clear division within myself, and I can now see the problem within me, then now I have awareness. So this first day is about becoming aware. I think that I'm hoping that you can see how this works. I'm going to go ahead and post online the keys and the final definition, and that'll end it for today's transition or translations of the Book of Secrets. Hopefully you can see how that works, that from one very visual reference of a world that is formless and empty, and how that mirrors to being your inner world that is formless and empty, and then how confusion will break forth through enlightenment. If you are dedicated to it, it'll take away that emptiness, it'll take away the confusion, it'll take away all the things that make you ignorant or mostly afraid through obscurity. So this is the end of the broadcast today. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and please leave comments below, and look forward to our next lesson.